Good day, everyone. I want to welcome you to the Mental Edge Leadership Channel. So excited you're here. Spend the next 10 to 15 minutes with me today. And we're going to talk today again on the series of leadership. And in the nutshell of this whole mission that we have with this channel is that you can never lead anyone past the capacity of leadership that you possess yourself. So what we're going to focus on today and each lesson is self-leadership. So today what I want to talk to you about is the law of process. You know, leadership is a process. See, leaders aren't developed overnight. You know, leaders aren't born overnight. They may be born overnight, but leaders take time to develop. You know, it takes a lot of todays to make a tomorrow. And when we look at this, we're going to look today, we're going to break down the combination of a whole bunch of todays. Doing things right each day will lead to a successful tomorrow. And that's what we're going to talk about. How leadership doesn't just develop in a day, it's a process. And we're going to start with the 4 steps today of the law of process. So, number one, there's phase 1 of a leader. And this oftentimes is overseen by other leaders. Great leaders can pick a leader, a diamond out of the rough. You know, they can see potential in someone, but many people don't see leadership in these first 2 phases. The first phase we're going to talk about today is the I don't know what I don't know phase. The I don't know what I don't know phase. Everybody begins in this phase. Doesn't matter what your trade is, doesn't matter what your position is, it doesn't matter what it is that you do. We all start out with the baseline of no knowledge, whatever we're in, whatever scope of influence we're in. We started at this phase 1, that I don't know what I don't know. It's this level of ignorance. And I use that word in the context of knowledge, not ignorance in an attitude or appearance, but we all start out in whatever trade we're in, whatever sport we're playing, whatever sport we're coaching, whatever business we're leading. We always start out with this phase 1. I just don't know. So what we need to do, this first phase is very critical in whatever scope of influence we're in, because this is where we gather data. This is where we get the baseline knowledge. And if we're not careful, many of us will, you know, we don't almost, it's a pride thing many times. We don't want to humble ourselves to ask others the simple and basic questions that we assume everyone else already knows. You know, here it is, we may be stepping into a profession or a trade or a sport or a program, and everyone around us knows all the great deep details of that. But if we don't have if we just have limited knowledge, we just learn by perception. It's so important to ask questions. It's so important in this first phase. In all 4 of these phases, it's very important to ask questions. But specifically here, if we're not careful, phase 1 is where many of us will stay our entire lives because we're too prideful to seek and put people around us that'll help escalate us to that the next phase. And if we're not careful, we'll spend more time needed here. We'll end up wasting valuable time, and ultimately we'll be wasting influence. So the first phase in the law, the process of a leader, phase 1 is I don't know what I don't know. We just don't know anything. In this phase, gather up as much information as you can. Ask questions, ask questions. I remember when quick reference to this. So my wife and I, we just recently in the last year or so, just got involved in stock trading. I didn't know anything about stock trading, nothing at all. So we got involved, and there was people that were, you know, watching the markets, watching the ticker tape. I knew none of that. I didn't know what any of those numbers meant. I didn't know how to trade, to buy, to sell. So you know what I did? I was at this phase 1. I was at this entry level. And what I did was I started asking questions. Anyone I knew who's been relatively successful in this world, I started asking them questions, basic questions. I let them know, hey, I am right now at the I don't know what I don't know because I don't know anything phase. Don't be ashamed to be there. Now, a year later, I've built a good baseline, a good phase 1, a good foundation of knowledge that's helped me catapult to the next level. So let's talk about phase 2. Phase 2 in the law of process of a leader is I know what I don't know. Now you've started to know. The second phase is different because now you've gathered some knowledge. Now you're starting to collect data and you're starting to learn a little bit about what you still don't know. Just because you have data and just because you've been informed of things still doesn't mean that you have mastered your trade or know what you're doing. Many times, this is the phase where a life change incident captures our attention and gets us on the road to change. Because how many know there's no better life lesson than a life lesson? There's no better way to learn than to be thrust into the fire in some things and something happens. Sometimes it's, catastrophic things that happen that guide us to our destiny, but other times it's just the tough road of hard knocks that we have to learn from in this process. So many times it's a life change incident that gets us on that road. Then we go through, many people don't like going through hardships. I'll go there. I'll talk about this for a minute. That many people don't like going through hardships. Everybody wants to grow. Everybody wants to grow in leadership. Everybody wants to be strengthened. But many people don't want to go through the hardships to reach that destination. Everybody wants to have a testimony, but nobody wants to go through the test to reach that testimony. We all want to get stronger. If I ask you today, do you want to get stronger in your leadership? Sure, your answer is going to be yes. Everybody's, yes, I do. I want to grow my leadership. But one of the greatest ways, and in this phase 2 we find this, one of the greatest ways that we mold our character. Your character is molded in this phase. And what it is oftentimes through the school of hard knocks. You learn something the hard way. And you've learned, and that's molded your character. I will never go down that road again. I won't make that mistake again. So now in this second phase, opposed to the first phase, is you just baseline don't know anything. You start gathering data. The second phase, you may have a life change event and you start to take this data and now begin to apply it into something you still really don't know. Now we look to phase 3 of leadership. And now this phase is called I know and grow, and it starts to show. This is the phase where it begins, where leaders, where anybody, not even great leaders, begin to see the leadership in you. Even though it's probably been growing in you for these first 2 phases for many years, many people don't see it manifest until this third phase. This is the I know and I grow, and it starts to show. You see, great leaders who shine and show great skill only do this because they've paid the price of preparation. As I sit here recording this today, my daughter's sitting here with me, right? So she actually plays basketball. She's a very good basketball player. And people will come to us all the time and say, oh my gosh, your daughter's a great basketball player. She's so good. She's a great basketball player. And one thing I tell them is, because many of those are parents that have daughters as well that are average or decent basketball players. And I tell them, I say, you don't know what my daughter does behind the scenes to make sure that it shows on the court. She pays the price then to make sure it shows now. You see, great leaders are willing to do the things that no one else is willing to do so that in the end they can do things that no one else can do. That's what great leadership is. Great leadership are people that are willing to pay the price behind the scenes. This third phase, this I know, I grow, and it starts to show, this phase is built on a lot of preparation. Whatever your trade is, if you're a coach, if you're an athlete, if you're a business leader, it's that preparation when nobody is watching that's going to really develop you to and past this phase of leadership. It's that preparation. It's going above and beyond. When everyone else is quitting and hanging up the towel and throwing it in, this is where you succeed. A little point that I wrote here, one of the toughest decisions you will ever make in life is to either walk away or try harder. There comes a point in whatever it is that we're doing, whether it's a career, whether it's a relationship, whether it's a sport or a job, whatever it is that we're in, there comes a point where it becomes tough. And many times when you reach that point where it seems like you've hit your ceiling, those that are willing to break through that ceiling and stay the course are the ones that break out and are the greatest leaders. So that's phase 3. So let's recap real quick before we go to phase 4. Phase 1, this is the process, the law process of a distinguished leader. The first phase is I don't know what I don't know. It's just that baseline of knowledge. We don't have it. We gather that knowledge here. The second phase is I know what I don't know. Now you've started to gather this information, and many times it's a life-changing incident that renavigates our course, something that molds our character and sticks us in the right direction. Then we move on to phase three. I know, I grow, and it starts to show. This is the phase where a true leader begins to develop. They've got the foundation behind them, but now they keep grinding. They haven't arrived. They realize they're always still asking questions. Great leaders always reflect back to one thing that's in phase one, is they're always learning, always asking questions. They've never arrived. When they're the smartest person in their group, you know what they do? They go find another group, a smarter group. They put themselves around people that are going to navigate them to their destination. So that's phase three. And the final phase, phase four, it's where we all aim to reach and we all want to get at in our scope of influence as a leader. Phase four is I simply go because of what I know. I simply go because of what I know. Great leaders take the time to develop. You see, time alone doesn't make someone a great leader. Just because you've been doing something the wrong way for 30 years doesn't mean after 30 years that it's the right way. I'll share this funny little story with you. There was a mother and her daughter were preparing Thanksgiving dinner, and they bought their ham. And the mother brought the plate out, and she bought the ham, and the daughter was helping her unwrap it. And they cut one end of it off, and they cut the other end of it off, and she put it in to bake it. And they asked her. She asked her mom. She said, "Mom, why do you cut both ends of the ham off before you cook it?" She said, "Oh, it was something that my mother always did." Well, the young daughter went to her grandmother and asked her, said, "Grandma, Mom told me that when you guys cook ham, you cut each end of it off." And she had it in the baking tray, and there was plenty of room in there. And she said, "Yeah, it was something that my mother had always done." And so that grandmother had died. But since, as the young girl started inquiring and asking more questions, the reason was that the great grandmother only had a small baking pan. So the great grandmother had to cut each end of the ham off for it to fit in her baking tray. So that was something that was passed down, and each generation after that was doing something that wasn't necessary, and it wasn't the right thing to do, but it had just been inherent, so they continued to do that. So just because we've been leading in one direction for a long time doesn't mean we've been leading the right way. So what we need to constantly do in this fourth phase is never be satisfied and constantly be willing to adjust our sails. Great leaders are always willing to adjust their sails. They navigate their course. And what happens is many people either stay at the first phase or begin to regress to the first phase because they're unwilling to adjust their sails. Just because something worked today doesn't mean that it'll work tomorrow. Great leaders will accommodate the times around them. They'll be relatable in any situation that they're in. They'll never change their mission or their purpose, but they'll always change their practice and approach. So the four phases of the law process in a leader. Phase one is I don't know what I don't know. You just gather the data at this phase. Phase two is I know what I don't know. Now you start to gather this data. Maybe it's a life-changing event, and it molds your character. Then you move to phase three. I know, I grow, and it starts to show. This is where you do the things behind the scenes to develop you as a leader. And then finally, phase four, where we all want to be, is I simply go because of what I know. And now you begin to apply the knowledge you have and navigate the course. So I hope this message was helped you out today, maybe pointed you in the right direction, gave you a skill set for your personal leadership. If you like this, I'd love for you to go on and make a comment on my YouTube channel, like my page, subscribe to my page, tell everyone else about it too. The Mental Edge 2018, there's a spot on there under my bio where you can shoot me an email. I'd love to hear from you, any questions you have. And it's great. We'll see you next week with a new message. Have a great day.